Welcome back into the Moon Griffon Show. Brandon Como filling in for Moon, who is just taking some time off today. Very happy to be here with you. Now, yesterday, as I was watching the White House press conference and I was listening to the White House kind of promote new lab results that suggest that heat and sunlight slow the coronavirus, it made me think about my next guest, because my next guest has been talking about this for a while now. As a matter of fact, I had the opportunity to interview our next guest a couple of weeks ago, and he highlighted some of what was talked about yesterday. Infectious disease expert Rik Heller joining us now on the Moon Griffon Show. Rik, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So it was very interesting to watch what was going on yesterday. As I said, the White House was talking about the laboratory evidence that suggests that the spread of coronavirus may ebb during the summer months. Talking about how the virus interacts with ultraviolet light as well as heat and humidity. And so, like I said, this is something that you've been talking about for quite a while, in the fact of humidity and the role that it plays in helping to slow the coronavirus.
That's correct. 10 years now.
Wow. Wow. Explain for our listeners a little bit more, especially if they missed yesterday's press conference, what exactly the role the summer heat and the humidity will play as it comes to slowing the coronavirus.
Well, it's summer heat is a correlate. It means that it happens with some other things. It's not causal.
Mm-hmm.
What's really causal is that warmth allows moisture to be absorbed by the atmosphere, and conversely, if it is cold, it gives up a lot of moisture, so it's very dry.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think all the time of how dry it really is in the winter. The winter is the driest time of the year, there's no question, particularly in the northern latitudes. And what happens is that the virus loves dry air so far as spread is concerned. So that 6-foot distance in dry air is probably about 20 or 30 feet. Now, we can't do that, but we need to be careful on those dry days. You get a lot more up north, like about 0 in Florida, a whole lot in Phoenix, Arizona. So you can go around and see that warmth and dryness are related, but they're not exactly the same. Now, when you go outside, when these viruses go outside or you're in crowds with a lot of people around, you might get droplet spread and things like that. But sun cooks in probably somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds with what's called ultraviolet C-band light. And that you can actually, and that just kills virus, it kills bacteria, kills just about every living thing with respect to microbes. And so indoor, you can get these ultraviolet UVC things. You can get them for your laptop. You can get them for your keyboard. I have one. My keyboard just slips in there, and it disinfects these things in about 30 to 60 seconds. Even these tough things called C. diff, which go around hospitals. Mm-hmm. So yes, the sunlight does a lot. The warmth absorbs moisture, and it's in the winter. You kind of got to flip it over here. It's in the winter that all that dryness attracts the ability for that virus to spread over long distances. And I don't mean outdoors. I'm talking about indoors, commercial buildings mostly.
Now, one thing that you talked about last time we spoke, which was on my show in the afternoons here on KPEL, is Mardi Gras. Everyone's been thinking about Mardi Gras in terms of people being together, and that was something that helped to spread the coronavirus. But you looked at it from a sense of weather and the humidity. So please explain that to the listeners here on the Moon Griffon Show statewide.
Sure. Well, a lot of people have been to New Orleans. It's muggy. It's Gulf weather. And it just so happened, unfortunately, that during Mardi Gras, there was about a 3-day period, which Mardi Gras fell right in the middle of it. It was a 3-day period of the driest that we've ever seen New Orleans, at least this year. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, it wouldn't necessarily, you can picture all the outdoor crowds and maybe some droplets spread, but the way it actually dries is there's probably, and I haven't looked for this very carefully, but there's probably going to contact trace back to a person or two who is probably somewhat symptomatic, and they were going around to bars and restaurants just innocently, and they were actually spreading it in significant numbers. And all it took is, you hit 10 people, 15 people. They then go back to their places around Louisiana and Texas if they drove or they flew in from other places, and they brought it back with them. And then begins the next process called the second generation of COVID. And that's the story of New Orleans and Mardi Gras.
So let me ask you this. Moon has been talking a lot the past couple days about masks and gloves, and we've got our governor that's telling us here in Louisiana we need to mask up. Should we be wearing masks and or gloves? I'll let you address both of them.
Well, real quick, it's complicated in that, just to think about it, if you're sick and you put on a mask, you will reduce by 90%, as much as 99%, the amount of what's called virus you shed. That means transmit. So you do get some reduction. Now, that sounds like a lot, but when you're involved with viruses and bacteria, you want 99.999%, things like that. But still, you're getting a benefit at 90 or 99%. So if you're sick and you wear a mask, then you do get a reduction. However, I would say that if you're sick, stay home. Get under the blankets, wait till you recover. There's a lot of reasons for that, not just because of your fellow man, but because you stand the chance of exchanging something with somebody else and you get two infections. And if you ask an ER doctor what they see the most of, it's dehydrated people and people with co-infections. So you do have to be very careful, and that's where a mask helps sick people. Then when it helps well people, it's very nominal. And I don't want to say zero, but a well person is going to inhale just about like it wasn't even there, all the virus that there is in that air in front of them. So it doesn't go that way. Now, there's this last thing called asymptomatic spread. We believe it's a semantic. The CDC defines 100.4 as fever. We define it as 99.5. The World Health Organization is going that way. Even the CDC is going that way. So we think that there is symptomatic spread, even though people are saying, "Hey, I'm fine." A little bit of cough going on there, right. And so that becomes the vector for the big spread. That means that if you are that and you wear a mask, you get that 90% to 99% reduction. So to be careful, to be courteous to other people, to assure them that maybe I'm not sick, but if there's any chance that I am, I'm not going to be able to spread it as easily. That's where a mask comes in handy.
So it feels like we're all learning new things about the coronavirus as this goes along, as we should. Now, let me ask you, this is something you've been studying for quite some time. As you've been saying, this is something you've been talking about, humidity and its relation to the coronavirus and relation to viruses overall, for over 10 years now. What, over the past couple of weeks and during this time, is there anything new that you're learning about this coronavirus? And I guess just new overall information as we're all kind of learning it. What are you noticing? What's standing out to you most of all about this coronavirus?
One of the things standing out the most is maybe academic, but it's the asymptomatic spread keeps coming up. It came up with SARS-CoV-1 in 2003, and it keeps coming up as a piece of media information. And it's great because it's conservative. It causes you to be more careful. But in retrospect, it came up with a flu constantly with H1N1 in 2009, asymptomatic spread. So there's a little less to worry about, and I'm just seeing it in large amounts of reporting about that, and it's just not been shown clearly enough to go with that. And then these other elixirs that they're talking about, I can't even say the word hydrochloroquine.
Oh yeah, hydrochloroquine.
The debates are, absolutely not at all. And so that's all very interesting. A lot of that just comes to, belief and faith and perhaps placebo. But in the end, what we're finding more than anything else is that this is one of the most contagious diseases. It's up there with measles. It's up there with norovirus, that cruise ship, what the British call the winter vomiting disease. And so it's as infectious as that. Unfortunately, it's not. It's much more deadlier than norovirus. Norovirus does not have much of a death rate at all, and mortality issue. So that's the biggest thing, is how infectious this is. So that's why we're seeing it in Ecuador and these equatorial places that are otherwise moist. It's still going to travel droplet spread and fomite and all these other kinds of ways, but it's not going to go like wildfire the way it, unfortunately, and this is bad news I have to offer, in the fall and the winter. Remember, we got this thing really kind of January, February, but really heavily in March. That's the end of winter and the beginning of spring. So we've really gotten a taste of it, but we're really going to get it. If we can't get a vaccine or some serious therapies, we're going to get a big dose of it, and that's kind of scaring me right now.
So let me ask you this, as we speak to infectious disease expert Rik Heller. Americans, look, want to get back to work, but the question is out there, is the reward worth the risk? What's your response when we're talking about reopening the economy in several states across the country on May 1st? That's been the big discussion. Is this something that we need to go ahead and just deal with moving forward with coronavirus being still prevalent? Is this something that you see that we need to go ahead and move on and reopen the economy, or is that something that's giving you a lot of concern right now?
Well, it's giving me concern. I've got different models for different parts of the country and different areas and geographies. Some of it, no problem. Florida, no problem. The Gulf Coast, no problem. And when I say no problem, I mean less so. But when you start to go up north, they don't see the end of spring, and they're not into summer until the end of May, early June. So I'm just really concerned that these outbreaks, those red dots on the map that the newspapers and the web are coming out with, that they just keep getting bigger and bigger. And I think you're going to see that up north. If we get more travel, then we're going to see those dots starting to get seeded in all sorts of places that we wouldn't expect, like the Gulf Coast, like in Florida. So we're going to really have to tamp down our activity, but hopefully we'll be able to increase it to where we can get a real economy going and business. It certainly affected our business in a positive way, and while I feel good about that, it's a very big mixed blessing here. We make something that keeps sick people away from well people, and it's just basically a thermometer that takes 3 seconds to tell you whether you're to help you tell whether you're contagious or not. And we have a free app too. If I may say too, there's a lot of blog information on there. It's not salesy. It's straightforward as far as we can promise. And that's on our welloinc.com site. That's just Wello, like hello, inc.com. And there you can get to your download to iPhone or Android or whatever. And that should give you a much better feel for the kinds of things I'm talking about and what to expect.
No, before I let you go, you led me right where I wanted to go about the Wello Watch app. I actually have it downloaded on my phone as well. Talk about this app that you and your wife developed and how you're able to use this app to decide when to get out and run your errands and when not to.
Yeah, so it's red, yellow, green, and it takes into account, for those in the epidemiology area, both susceptibility, which, by the way, dryness creates susceptibility in us, and there are ways to avoid that too, by the way. And then it also is transmissibility. So susceptibility is a bunch of well people. That's what most of us are. And transmissibility is a sick person going in a crowd. And so the ease of transmissibility is on the dry days. So we call those red days. And when we talk about the green days, those are days when it's much harder for the virus to spread, and you're less susceptible in your respiratory system, in particular in your lungs.
All right, we've been speaking with infectious disease expert Rik Heller. Rik, thank you so much for all the information. We really do appreciate your knowledge, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Be well.